So we're now in the final countdown for the 2023 exams. So I thought I'd record a quick video for you on exam preparation and technique. So what you should be focusing on with pretty much 5 weeks to go now till the first exam. So you need to establish whereabouts you're at. So by now you should have covered the entire syllabus at college, and you should have a solid grasp of what will be examined in each paper, so paper 1 and paper 2. You should have made yourselves a revision timetable, so allowing sufficient time for all your subjects, not just your favourites. There is no point at this late stage starting from week one's material and going back over everything you have learned. There is just simply not enough time to do that. What I would recommend is that by now you need to be working on your exam technique and identifying weak areas. So there will be some validity in going back over some of your notes and looking at the textbook and that kind of thing, but only for specific areas that you're struggling with, not for absolutely everything. So the most efficient way to do this is just to get your hands on as many past papers as you can. So for the new specification, we've got the 7126, the old AS papers. They stopped those in 2020, but those are a really useful source of practice material for some of the section A and B things that will crop up from the first year. 7127-1, you've got the specimen paper from 2018 through to 2022. 2022, I don't think is online yet. For some reason, AQA have decided not to publish that yet. So you need to ask your teacher nicely for a copy of that one. Same for 7127-2. We've got 2018, definitely through to 21 available online. But unless you speak to your teacher nicely, you may not be able to get hold of 2022's yet. Now, let's not overlook the old specifications. So if you look at ACCN 1 and 2, those are the old AS papers. So they finished in, I think, 2018, 2019 was the last sitting, and the resit. So ACCN 1 and 2, all the basics from the first year. There's nothing in there, I don't think, that won't be included or as a possible topic in the new specification. ACCN 3, ignore anything on international accounting standards and dissolution of partnerships. So that's where a partnership completely ceases to exist. You won't get any questions on that, but you will get things like professional ethics now, which weren't in there before. And then for ACCN 4, the old management accounting unit, you can do all of that, but just ignore anything on manufacturing accounts because those are no longer examined. So exam technique, you are going to have 2 papers that are 3 hours long. That's assuming you don't get any extra time. And those papers are split down into 3 distinct sections. So section A is your multiple choice and your fairly straightforward questions, 30 marks there. Section B is the longer computational questions and the 6 mark, often the 6 mark written questions in there. So 40 marks for section B and then 50 marks for section C, coming from 2 essays, neither of which are optional. You have to do them both. You don't get a choice over the essay topics. Now, if we do a strict allocation of time, it works out as 1.5 minutes per question. But I'm going to suggest that you try and allow 40 minutes for the first section, 50 minutes for the second section, and then give yourself 90 minutes to cover the 2 essay questions, to allow for a bit of planning time, and also hopefully to do a bit of checking at the end, so you're not just kind of scribbling right up to the end. So please bear in mind that with the section C questions, don't leave your decision right till the very last minute. Make sure you've got enough time, and if you think you're running out of time, stick the decision in straight away before you start doing too much writing. That would be my advice there. Read the question, make sure you're answering the question that's been asked, not the one you want to answer. Annotate the question. So the best students will have scribblings, workings all over the question. They'll be making little notes as they go along, doing calculations, that kind of thing, particularly with the section C questions. Show your workings throughout. So if you haven't shown your workings on the question, then use the section that's labelled workings. It's not given for no reason, so make sure you fill that up. Plan your essays. Don't just plough in and start writing, unless obviously you really are very short for time, but if you've paid attention to the timings, that didn't ought to be the case. Once you've done that, once you've done your paper, mark it. So mark it very strictly according to the examiner's mark scheme. Do not give yourself the benefit of the doubt. If you're not sure about something, whether you should award the mark or not, then generally don't. Or maybe ask your teacher and see what their opinion is. Have a look over the paper and what can you congratulate yourself for? What did you do right? Which bits went well? Which bits are you hoping might come up again in this year's exams? But most importantly, what did you do wrong? Where did you go wrong? Where did you not score enough marks? Do you understand why your answer was wrong? And can you see how the examiner's answer has been calculated? If so, then have a look at the examiner's answer, put it to one side, and have another go at the same question. So it might be that you misread the question, you got the wrong end of the stick. If that's the case, then do the same question again right away. If not, so if you look at the examiner's answer and you have no idea how that's been arrived at, then ask someone. So maybe ask your teacher if you're in college, ask fellow students for help, have a look and see if there are any YouTube videos perhaps on that particular question, but don't just kind of put it to one side and think, oh, no idea where that's come from. You can learn from this, and that's the whole purpose of doing past papers. It's to see as much what you did wrong as what you did right. So identify those weak areas. So only once you've done all of that should you move on to the next paper, in my opinion. I think you need to make sure that you've nailed one paper before you go on to the next one. Okay, as you're going along, chart your progress. So calculate your percentage. What mark did you give yourself? You could convert it into a grade using the grade boundaries, but to be honest, probably a bit of a waste of time. Boundaries have been up and down with the introduction of the new specification, obviously with COVID. So I'm not sure that you'll be able to make too much sense of all of that. But you should notice an improvement in your raw marks with any luck over time, particularly if you do the same paper again, maybe leave a week or two and then have another go at the same one. Have a look at the examiner's report. So I don't think there are many available at the moment. You probably can only get your hands on 2019s. I don't think they bothered with them for 2020 and 21 because the cohort sitting the exams was so small. It was just the people that weren't happy with their tag grades that sat those exams. So there weren't enough papers really to make an informed judgment. But whatever you can get your hand on, if it's just 2019, or ask your teacher again if you can get your hands on 2022. Have a read of the examiner's report. This is really useful. You can learn quite a lot from this. You can look for areas that previous students have struggled with. These are much more likely to be re-examined in the future. So if the examiner thinks an area hasn't been done particularly well, you can expect that to crop up again in the fairly near future. Have a look and see what the examiner has identified in terms of what the best students did. So it will often say the best students did this, the best students did that, the best students planned their essays, the best students labelled all their workings. You want to be the best student, so make sure you take a note of what those students did. Try and avoid common pitfalls. So one common pitfall is not allowing enough time to plan your section C answers. Now, this particular section in both the papers makes up 42% of your overall grade. So you really can't afford to ignore it. These are the big money marks. So you need to make sure that you answer those properly. Layouts, you need to know your layouts. There's nowhere to hide. If you don't know how an income statement should be laid out, then you really do need to learn that. There are no prizes for being creative. Make sure you know the layouts for the income statement of financial position, statement of changes in equity, statement of cash flows, schedule of non-current assets, the cash budget, production budget, and so on. Make sure you know them. The easiest way to learn them isn't just to sit and stare at them, is to actually do practice questions involving those and have a look at the textbook, see what that recommends, have a look at the examiner's mark scheme and see how things have been laid out. But just practice until you know them all off by heart. Labels, make sure you label your work clearly. So is it a monetary amount? Is it pounds? Is it thousands of pounds that things have been abbreviated to? Is it a percentage? Is it a number of times per annum? Make sure you label things for the examiner's benefit, but also for your own, because often you'll be doing something sequential. So you'll work out one set of figures and then you'll be expected to go on and do something else with those. So when you look back at them, do they make sense? Is it a monetary amount? Is it a number of units? What are we working in here? Essays, I keep going on about this, but the best section C answers always have a clear plan. They include relevant calculations. They demonstrate a clear chain of reasoning, so they consider the cause of something, the effect, consequences, and so on. They avoid generic points. One thing I haven't listed here, but they also avoid regurgitating the source data to any great extent. They identify limitations to the source data, and above all, they answer the question. What's the advice? What's the decision? Make sure you do that. Okay, so weak areas then. We need to identify which areas need extra work. So it should be fairly obvious. If you've done a paper quite strictly without looking at the answers, you'll find that there are some questions that you maybe couldn't even get started with. Try and work out why that was. Was it that how the question was worded? Was it you just didn't understand what was being asked? Could you see once you looked at the answer how it was arrived at? But if not, then obviously revisit that topic. Ask for help until you can. Did you grasp the wrong end of the stick with some questions? Make sure you understand the key terms and the command words. What is it asking you to do? Are you being asked to define something? Are you asked to give advice? Are you asked to justify something, evaluate something? Make sure you understand what those words actually mean. Consider making flashcards. Now, I don't often advocate the use of flashcards, but for some definitions, formulae for things like ratio analysis, I think they can be great. So learning the accounting concepts, the errors, that sort of thing. But make sure they're your own. Do not rely on a set of flashcards that have been prepared by somebody else. Part of the process is actually producing those flashcards, so going through the motions, looking up the information you need, writing it down, checking that it's correct, and then obviously learning it. The beauty with flashcards is once you have memorized a formula or you've memorized an accounting concept or an error and the definition of it, then you can put it to one side. You can have a pile of ones that you know and a pile of ones that you need to work with. And hopefully over time, the pile of the ones that you still need to learn should become smaller and smaller. So just some ideas there. As I said, errors, concepts, ratios, variances, the formulae for standard costing and variance analysis could all be done on a flashcard. Okay, so lastly, you do need to take care of yourself. It's no good if you give yourself a nervous breakdown in the process. So you need to manage your time, make sure you allow yourself plenty of time, look after yourself, eat well, stay hydrated, make sure you get enough sleep. Exercise. I think this is really important, and you may not enjoy exercise, but even just a little walk around the block, get out in the fresh air or even in the rain, clear your head, and then maybe think about something you've just learned. Take a break and think while you're walking, allow yourself a 10-minute walk somewhere and just think, can I remember those ratios that I've just tried to learn? Okay, and lastly, factor in some rewards and downtime. So nobody can work, all day, every day. If you've got a good revision plan in place, then that should allow you plenty of time to do something nice to reward yourself. But make sure you do the work before you get the rewards. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. And keep working. It'll soon be over.